Okay, welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have a real treat for you with our guest speaker, Redmond. Redmond was a Navy corpsman as a combat medic in the Marines. He deployed to Afghanistan, where he stepped on an IED and lost his left leg. Since then, he came home and decided to begin a life of motivating others. He's competed in track and swim internationally for Team USA Invictus Games, Endeavor Games, and Warrior Games. And some of you may recognize him if you're a fan of The Amazing Race or the Triumph Games on CBS. And Time Magazine has written about him, and last year he was the keynote speaker for the Naval Ball. So we are honored to have him here and really excited. We think you're going to leave here being really motivated and inspired. So please welcome to the stage Redmond Ramos.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me just get this slide going here. Can we get it here? How's everybody doing today? Good. Well, I'm incredibly excited to be here. As she said, my name is Redmond Ramos, and I was a Navy corpsman combat medic with the Marines for just over 5 years. And I know, there we go, it's a nice Marine. When you hear that, when you hear Navy and Marines, you hear combat, a bit confusing. There's a couple contradictory terms there. So basically, if you want to be any kind of medical personnel in the Marine Corps or with the Marines, you actually don't join the Marines. You join the Navy. The Marine Corps is technically a department of the Navy, and they like to bring all of their medical people from the Navy themselves, just so there's a little bit of separation between the Marines and medical. So if you're like myself and you want to be a combat medic and you want to be alongside some of the best fighters in the world, right, Ra? Wherever the Marine was, there we go. You actually join the Navy, go through Navy boot camp, do all of your medical school through there, and then there's a point where you go what we call greenside, and you go, that's just when you transfer to the Marine Corps. Some people do it their entire career, some people just do it for an enlistment or so, and then they can go back to blue side or their real Navy command. I'm not actually the first one in my family to do it. I'm one of 4 brothers. We all did the same exact job. 3 out of 4 of us were actually with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines Golf Company, which is a group of just over 200 people. Crazy coincidence, and if you're in the military, you know that is all it was, a coincidence. You have no pull whatsoever, and we wish we could say that we planned it out that way, but that's just how it works out. We all knew we wanted to be with the grunts, and we all knew we wanted to be combat medics, and we just lucked out to being able to go and serve alongside really the same group of just a couple hundred people. Oh, thank you. It started out with my oldest brother. He's on the left over there. He joined in 2004, right after high school, and after his completion of medical school, he went greenside and almost immediately was set on his deployment to go to Iraq. And he had a very rough deployment in Iraq. He went to Ramadi and Fallujah, and he was able to really live his big picture goal, live his purpose, which was for him being able to hands-on directly help somebody. It's something that he wanted to do since he was a kid, and once we heard all of the stories of valor and bravery from him and his brothers out there, it was something that became our big picture goal, something that we now wanted to do. And so next up was my middle brother, Ryan. He's the only one that didn't go 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. He actually went MARSOC, Marine Corps Special Operations Command. It was the Marine Corps' version of Special Forces. They have, it was right when they were going through a change, so I think it's back to Force Recon. At that point, it was MARSOC. And he had another rough deployment. A lot different than ours, being grunts, but he was with a smaller group of people, really a more efficient group of people. They were doing some crazy stuff and had more training than we did. And also, he was able to hands-on directly help some people while he was out there and live his big picture goal. My little brother is the only one that's still in the military. Both of my older brothers actually left and became police officers after. My little brother has been on 2 humanitarian deployments with 2.5, or 1 with 2.5 and 1 with 2.4. Humanitarian deployments are a much different way to deploy with the Marines. And you are helping people. I think you can help a lot more people, and you're going to be doing it indirectly. At least as a corpsman, that's what we did. I had a chance to go on the same deployment, 31st MU, and a very interesting way to teach people. We didn't speak the same language, and my friends and I were in charge of teaching this very important life-saving medical skills, CLS, or combat lifesavers, to an incredible group of people, but a group of people that do not speak the same language as us. So we had to think outside the box, and we had to think of kind of fun, interesting charade ways to teach combat life skills. And it was a great deployment, but when we got back is when I had the deployment that I love to talk about, the deployment that really changed me, I think, in a better way, and that was my deployment with a group called 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, Kilo Company. I was incredibly lucky and fortunate to be able to go with this group. Anybody that was in the military in 2010, 2011, at least if you were in the Marine Corps, you'll know about 3-5 and staying in Afghanistan. They had a very rough deployment, and I actually showed up at the tail end of their deployment. I showed up just about halfway through their deployment as what we call a combat replacement. A combat replacement is when somebody out there in Afghanistan or Iraq gets hurt. They still need to replace that person. If a lieutenant gets hurt, they need another lieutenant. If a corpsman, in this case, gets hurt or killed, they need another person to come out and fill that billet so the other Marines aren't missing their corpsman or their leader. So I had a very great opportunity to go out with these guys. The first half of the deployment that I had missed was honestly so much worse than the part that I had to deal with. They had 24 KIA on that first half alone, 24 Marines that won't be able to come home, and they only had one more. Not that one is good, but they only had one more in the second half that I was there. So you can see the huge difference between the first half of this deployment and then the half that I was lucky enough to be able to go on. And this was my group when I ended up getting hurt. This was a picture just taken a few days before, and it's really, these are some of the best people I've ever known in my entire life. And the stories that we have together is something that kind of extra family relationship I don't think I'll ever be able to get again. And I was incredibly lucky to have them take me in under their wings and let me work with them during that deployment. As I mentioned, they did have a rough deployment. They had 25 KIA total. They had just over 200 people injured, Marines and corpsmen injured, as well as about 80 amputations on one deployment alone. And that is where my part of the story for this deployment ended, as I ended up becoming the last person injured on this deployment, and I became the last amputee. And there's a lot of ways to talk about being injured in combat. There's a lot of ways to talk about being an amputee. And I think the best way to do it is to not just talk about it, but instead kind of let you live being an amputee for a moment. So if you look under your chairs, I left a chainsaw under one lucky person's seat. I hope you're ready to volunteer. Now, instead, it's a good group. Some people can't laugh, and then the rest of the speech is very awkward. So thank you for laughing. So instead of just telling you the details, I kind of want you to just imagine that you're living in Afghanistan. I want you to just imagine, if you will, that it's 2011, and you're in Sangin, Afghanistan, and you're leaving the wire, you're leaving base. And as you do, you take that big, deep breath in. You have all the wonderful smells of Afghanistan, the farmland, the dirt, the mud, and the rain. It's actually, you have that great rain smell because it's been raining quite a bit. And that means your feet are wet. In fact, every single patrol with 3-5 and Sangin, Afghanistan means you will get wet feet. And the reason for that is your leaders, much like the leaders in this room, are smart. And they know that your chances of getting blown up or injured by an improvised explosive device are drastically decreased if you go through the water. Because IEDs don't work well in the water. And so if you're like me, you end up having this kind of love-hate relationship with water. You love it because you know it keeps you safe, but you're also just tired of wet feet. Has anybody had wet feet before? It's annoying. It sucks. And there's a part of you that starts to think, how bad is an IED going to feel really? Wet feet is probably going to be a little bit worse, right? And so normally it would get to you, but not today. Because today is one of your last patrols. And so you start thinking about all of the things you're going to do when you start heading home in a few days. Start thinking about all the beer you're going to drink. Start thinking about all the food you're going to eat. And I wanted pizza. It's all I could think about. And that's when you hear this scary word on a radio from a Marine a few people away. You hear the word casualty, and your heart starts racing. and you're hoping that you just heard it wrong, or maybe it's a mistake. And everybody starts to huddle around the radio, and it's been confirmed. One of your Marines in another squad has been blown up. He's still alive. Nobody or no other information is given. So everybody's huddling around the radio, just hoping and praying that it's not going to be as bad as you think until you get that call where they say that the Marine has had his leg blown off. And now you just start thinking, do they have a corpsman? Who is their corpsman? Is it the corpsman that's hurt? And all you can think is, why are we not there? I wish we were closer. And as your heart races and races, you get the call on the radio that they do have a corpsman. The corpsman jumped on him. Corpsman saved his life, and they are going to be just fine. You start to relax. And then your leader reminds you what's been happening and saying in Afghanistan. What's been happening every time somebody gets hurt. And when that helicopter comes in just to pick up this injured Marine, the enemy has been shooting at it from far away. Just enough so the helicopter has to leave, go back, and come back with an armor, and come back with a gunship, just to hope that that Marine doesn't be able to come home, or isn't able to come home. So we have a little bit of time, and your leader says we're going to start our trek over there, not even for medical support, so you're no longer a corpsman, you're just there with your amazing Marines, and you are going to do fire support. You're just going to sit there and try and make a presence, so hopefully that helicopter doesn't get shot at. It's about a 15-minute trek over there, and 10 minutes in, all you can think about is this Marine, all you can think about is your friends, and then you start wandering off. Your mind starts wandering off into fun things. You start thinking about home again. And if you're like me, if you're food motivated, you start thinking about that pizza again. You start thinking about what one of your Marines said right as you were leaving the wire today. He had told you about this rumor that his mom had told him, that Pizza Hut has this new pizza, stuffed crust pizza, with pepperoni, cheese, and sausage in the crust itself. And you just start thinking, oh, this can't be real. I hope it's real. In a couple weeks, could I be having this, what I thought would be a scientifically impossible phenomenon? They put a pizza inside a pizza. How is that possible? And as you're thinking about that, that's when the bomb goes off. I wish it was kind of like the movies, but it's not. I wish I could say that I saw the camera zooming in to get that really cool shot, or I noticed the dramatic music starting to play to signify that something bad was happening. But it's not like that. You just walk in, fantasizing about pizza when you should be focusing on your work, and then all of a sudden you step on a bomb, and now your life is different. And when you fall on the ground, muscle memory, everybody's been taught to do this. You pull your tourniquet out and go to treat yourself, and something's going on. Feels like you're there for minutes. It's only been a couple seconds, but you just can't put that tourniquet on. And right when the pain starts to hit, you let out your first scream, and your Marine's already on you. He ran through what's basically a minefield, jumped on you, threw a tourniquet on, did not care about his own life. Your Marine, all he can think about was saving somebody else. And before you even register what had happened, and that there's a tourniquet on you, there's another Marine that did the same thing, saved your life, jumped on you, and put a second tourniquet on, just in case, because your other leg has a little bit of blood on it. As you're sitting there, you're wondering what to do. I mean, what can you do? You can do what we did, and take a selfie. Think about the most important thing in your life, and for me, that was, how many likes do you think I'll get this on Facebook if I post this right now? Show the world how strong you really are. Show everyone that you don't care what happened to you, you care what you're going to do. And I wanted to live. I sat there in the dirt, pissed off that my injury didn't look that bad. I mean, sometimes you just want it to look more gruesome so you look cooler. All I can think about was, I've been alive for 2 decades, but I've never lived. I keep holding myself back. My entire life up until that point, I wouldn't let myself do anything new or exciting, because if it was new or exciting, I was going to fail. And if I failed, I was a failure. There was no gray area for me. I wouldn't take any cool risks, or I wouldn't go out and try and do anything that has even a calculated risk or gamble. Because if it had a risk, I was going to fail, and if I failed, I was a failure. But you can't be afraid to fail. Don't be like me. In fact, do you know what you call somebody that's never failed? Boring. If you're going to go out and try something new, you're going to fail. And it's not if, it's not maybe, it's how many times are you going to fail? How often are we going to fail? And I personally now would rather try and fail than fail to try. I'd rather regret even 1,000,000 things that I have done than regret one thing that I haven't done. But it's easy to take pain, take our negative surroundings, and use that as our excuse to give up, especially when you think you've already given it every single thing you've got. When I was in the hospital, our surroundings were telling us very clearly that we were broken. This is the first day in the hospital in Afghanistan, and if you see me on the left, pre-beard, totally different. That's why I have a beard. I don't like that face. And then the Marine in the middle, that's the one we were going to. He was hurt much worse than I was. And then if you look in the bottom right, there's another hand, and that was from our sergeant from the day before who had gotten blown up. A very similar injury to mine. And this is after the deployment, like I said, is nothing compared to what these heroes had to deal with before. That first half was much worse. And still, there's 3 people getting blown up within 48 hours of each other. Our surroundings were telling us we're broken, but I think this room and this experience taught us one very important thing, and that's your surroundings don't define you. Only you get to define you. No matter how bad, no matter how negative our surroundings may seem, it's simply up to us if we're going to let it dictate how we run our lives. And there's a lot of important things I learned in that room, but I think that's the most important thing. When I was in the hospital, I actually got to keep my leg. I was what we call a limb salvage. So I kept my leg for about 2 months until I eventually got the amputation, trying to save it. And when I was there in the hospital in California, about 10 days after injury, I was given an opportunity to go get a tour of my future physical therapy room. This will be the room that I'll spend the next about 2 years of my life. Most of the combat injured amputees spend about 2 years or so in this physical therapy room. And you do everything from your very basic physical recovery to later on when people are advanced and they need a lot more active treatments. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was I was going to go in this sad, pathetic battle room that I saw in Hollywood. I kept having all of these images of these people broken and beaten and crying and their families miserable, and I didn't want to go into this room. But luckily, I have brothers that won't take no and won't let me pity myself, and they pushed me into this room, whether I wanted to go or not. And I saw that the room was intimidating, but for a completely different reason than I had been afraid of. It was intimidating seeing all of these amazing Marines, missing arms, missing legs, scars everywhere, but working out harder than anybody I'd ever seen work out before. Sweating in their shirts that said stuff like, "I had a blast in Afghanistan." Not only were these guys working out harder than anybody I'd ever seen work out before, they were still able to keep a very healthy amount of trash talk up. And don't underestimate the importance of trash talk. When we were in the military, when we were with the Marines, trash talk was key to growth. Not just making fun of each other, but being able to have an environment where no matter how good you do, somebody is always expecting you to do more. It's intimidating, but it fosters this amazing room of growth when you realize that no matter how hard you push, your leaders and your coworkers and your friends and your family are going to expect a little bit more. And it ends up becoming a game where you're always trying to do better than your Marines. And your Marines are always trying to beat the doc because they can't have doc beat them. And it ends up creating this amazing sense of growth for everybody. But when we were injured, it seemed like some people thought we were supposed to lose that. In fact, I remember that first day that I got internet access. My Marines had already started their trek back, and they went to Leatherneck, which was a safer base at the time. And I got on Facebook, and I saw all these messages from my Marines saying, "We love you, Doc. You're in our prayers. We're thinking about you, buddy. Hang in there, pal." And it just destroyed me, because that's not how we talk to each other. If anybody's been around Marines or sailors, you know that's not how we talk. We talk very inappropriately to each other. We're always pushing each other. And when I saw that, I thought, I'm out of the club. I'm now going to be this guy that everybody pities. And luckily, I posted this picture of that pepperoni pizza I was talking about, and their lovely messages immediately went from, "We love you, Doc," to a lot of horrible things I can't say here. And then I felt I'm back in. And in this room, there was actually still people being able to have that healthy competition and that trash talk. In fact, every single time the one-armed guy would go up to the pull-up bar, you'd at least hear one voice yell out, "Hey, do you need a hand?" No, you're good. Okay. We used to listen to this 8-minute abs video. And there's a part in the video where the coach, he's doing crunches, and he looks at the camera and he says, "On this workout, remember to touch your toes." Oh, every single time you would say that, everybody would turn and stare at the double-leg amputee, the man with no toes, and then we'd start yelling at him for not listening to the tape. "Hey, if you're not going to listen, if you're going to be lazy and not touch your toes, get out of here, man." Is that joke too far? Okay. This is the third time I've tried that joke. It's failed every time, but I'm not going to stop because I'm going to do it until I get a good laugh. There was no room for pity here, no room to be a victim, no room to say, "Poor me," or ask, "Why me?" And it wasn't because individually anybody was great. It was because as a whole, nobody was allowing their friends, their families, their coworkers to pity themselves. And there was something great that came from that room, and it might seem to some that it was just a bunch of people making fun of each other, but when you have an environment like that, whether it's your personal life or your work, you start getting images like this. This is my first casualty, the first person I was able to help. And this was just a few months after he was injured. And this is something you would not see in an environment where everybody is allowed to take a break and everybody is allowed to have a little bit of pity and maybe an excuse here and there. This is something I believe you can only get, and we would have only seen in an environment like this, where it was all about growth, and we put excuses, no excuses allowed in this room. And this was just a few months after injury. His injury is bad enough where he's basically wheelchair bound. He has prosthetics that he can't really use well, so he's almost solely in a wheelchair. And now, 6 years later, he's actually created an entire new form of martial arts and self-defense for people in wheelchairs. He's helping thousands of people defend themselves, people that thought they had to be vulnerable their whole lives. He's changing the way they look at their situation. And I think it all started because of a couple important things we learned from this room. And the most important thing is obstacles are just opportunities. Every single time we're faced with any kind of obstacle, big or small, I guarantee you we are presented with an opportunity to succeed and grow. It might be really hard for us to find that opportunity, but I guarantee every single time we're faced with an obstacle, we are presented with an opportunity to succeed and grow. For Jake, his opportunity was helping thousands of people feel less vulnerable and feel more accomplished and be able to defend themselves. For me, it was more selfish. It was my opportunity to grow in track. I didn't have my big picture goal yet. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. But I did know that when a doctor came in, about 10 days after injury, the first day I was in that hospital in California, and he told me I couldn't run, I knew I had this selfish goal. You tell me I'm not going to do it, I will. He actually came up to me, and it was one of his first sentences. He had said, "Mr. Ramos, my name is Dr. Dromsky, and you will never be able to run again if you decide to keep your leg." It was good to hear that, because everybody up until that point thought they were helping me by telling me, "Yeah, you look fine. You'll probably be okay. You'll probably be able to keep it." And everybody was afraid to tell me the truth I needed to hear. And when I heard him tell me my obstacle clear as day, it was a little bit sad, but also it opened up a lot of doors. And in fact, you know that he said an obstacle, but if you heard, there's a second part to that sentence. He said, "Mr. Ramos, you will never be able to run again." Obstacle, if you decide to keep your leg. So there was an opportunity there. And I may have been a medical professional, but I do have a simple mind, and when he said that, all I could think was, so you're telling me there's a chance. All I have to do is just cut this leg off? All right, you want two? Cut my hand off. I don't care. And I took this as this obstacle, which it obviously was a minor obstacle, but we took it as an opportunity, again, as a selfish goal. But to accomplish this selfish goal, I wanted to do track. I used to love running. Do we have runners in this room? Show of hands. Okay, we have a few. Awesome. Lene's a runner. Okay, I lied earlier. I didn't actually love running, but I love that feeling after you run. It's this weird sense of accomplishment you get that I think you can only get through swimming and running and other cardio workouts. When you're done with the 5K, when you're done with the 1 mile, when you're done with anything, I have this great feeling, no matter how hard it is. And I wanted to do something I'd never done before, which is track. I never thought I liked track, something I never thought I would want to do. But now I had this really cool opportunity to try and pursue it. And it ended up becoming the love of my life. It became the one thing I cared about, and I did it for just over 3 years, about 3.5 years. I did track and swimming. And it was fun to go and compete for myself, and then go and compete for Team Navy, and then go and compete for Team USA. And as we progressed during Invictus Games in London, and as we progressed, it stopped being about myself, and then I kind of started seeing, oh, I can kind of help people. I can be a coach now. Now there's amputees that are newer, and now this selfish goal is starting to be a little bit less selfish. Now I can be a coach and focus more on my friends. And it became this amazing part of my life, and it led to some other things. Lene had mentioned a show called Triumph Games. And I was very fortunate to be able to compete and bring home this fancy trophy that they got from Walmart. It's very... I think it's the same one I had when I was in Boy Scouts, did the Derby. But I was only able to bring this thing home because I had this opportunity to go on the show on CBS called Triumph Games, and they wanted to change the way people looked at disabled veterans, the way we looked at wounded warriors. Every single time we had saw, or at least I had seen, wounded warriors on the news, it was always some negative story. Not negative as in they're saying they hate wounded warriors, but it was a story about pity. It was a story about wounded warrior gets disrespected by airlines, or wounded warrior's service dog not allowed in a restaurant, or wounded warrior got treated badly here or there. It was never wounded warrior decides to get a job at Home Depot. Wounded warrior decides to leave his job and become the best house husband and stay-at-home dad ever. It was never these fun, positive stories, and we wanted to kind of change that. And so a lady named Mary Hagee, an Army vet herself, created this show, ended up being an hour special on CBS, and she wanted to take 14 motivated vets that had already competed in some kind of sports internationally and have them compete against each other in this crazy competition in New York City. We weren't told what the competition was going to be at first, so we had to sign up knowing that it was going to be all about adapting and overcoming. And about 2 months before the competition, they finally told us what we were going to do. And it was a week long in New York City, 3 actual competition days. It was going to be, the first day was a triathlon of sorts, a full marathon on a bike, an open water kayak obstacle course, and a shooting course. And then the second day was going to be a mental challenge, puzzles and stuff. And the third day and last day was going to be racing these souped-up, custom-built Roush Mustangs from Roush themselves, going 500 horsepower, zipping across the country's biggest personal racetrack, Allen Wilzig Manor. And I thought, yes! I drive a Toyota Prius. The need for speed. You can see it outside. I came from Newport Beach. It took me 4.5 days to get here. So and the other thing I didn't mention is I had never been, and it's going to sound like an excuse because it is. I'd never been on a bike before, or I'd never been on a bike as an adult. I did it a few times as a kid, and I just despised it. I never wanted to do it again, and now I was told, you're going to go on this competition, and one of the biggest things you're going to do is get on a bike. And we're going against all these people that, even if they're not great, they may have been on a bike before. And how many, can we get a show of hands of how many were just in any branch of the military? Show of hands. Wow. Round of applause for all these ladies and gentlemen. Wow. That is, good job. Wow. There's a common phrase that I think goes through all branches, and that's attack your weaknesses. So this obstacle of knowing that I was going to be bad at a bike is really an opportunity to attack your weakness. What I do, and it's a terrible habit, and I know a lot of us do the same thing, is we focus on all the things we're great at, and we try and get even better at it. We focus on the things we're good at, and we try and get great at it. And we try and focus on the things we're amazing at, and we try and get perfect. But a lot of times we're too afraid to tackle the things we're really bad at. And it's because for me, I just get a little bit embarrassed, and I don't want people to see me fail. And this was one time that I said, enough with that. I want to be totally honest with myself, and I know that this is going to be my biggest weakness, and let me focus all 2 months on just the kayak and the bike. And I think that's the only reason why we were able to bring home the trophy, is by actually being brutally honest with ourselves, which I never used to do, and I know a lot of us don't, and say, I am bad at this. This is what I want to focus on. This is going to make my company better. This is going to make my personal life better, my personal relationship better, whatever it is that you're trying to focus on. And after we did this show for CBS, I think that's when I got one of my favorite opportunities that I was able to go on, and that's The Amazing Race. Has anybody seen The Amazing Race? Nice. Anybody see my season, last season? Anybody not like me? Couple people. If you don't know what The Amazing Race is, it's really a great show. It's this reality show where they take 22 individuals. Normally it's 11 teams of 2. For us, it was 22 individuals that they paired into 11 teams of 2. And they send us around the world on a crazy adult, physical, mental scavenger hunt, is I think the best way to describe this show. You go all different countries, and just about every day, every episode, somebody's eliminated. There's 12 episodes. And you'll get clues that range from walk down the street and buy a donut to fly 3,000 miles away and find this statue. I mean, it's always changing. Some of the challenges are crazy physical. You're always getting lost, and everything is about adapting and overcoming, but it's also a reality show. And if you don't know much about reality TV, or if you know one thing about reality TV, it's there's a lot of focus on drama and complaining. And I knew, as much as I love CBS, I knew that they were hiring me because they thought they were going to have a beautiful, dramatic scene somewhere about this amputee that's having all these issues, physical issues. And so I said, I have a big picture goal that I want to create before I go on the race. And for me, that big picture goal was I wanted to shock the world, never complain. No matter what was happening with the leg, no matter what kind of pain we were in, I wanted to make sure I never complained. And by that, I was hoping to shock the world. And if anything, I think we lived up to that. A lot of people that watch the race may think this was my experience. That's not even my partner. Like, I don't know why I'm with him. But really, it felt more like this. I felt like I was always 2 steps behind people. I felt like I was always falling down and always facing some kind of obstacle here and there. But when the show was airing, especially when it finished airing, I had a lot of my friends, my medical friends and my amputee friends, and they would call me or message me, and they would say, it's amazing that, I'd like to leave this up while I talk. They say, it's amazing that you went, just about a month and you never had any issues with your leg. Like, what are the chances? That's great. It's exactly what I wanted people to think. Because if you remember, I had this big picture goal. I wanted to shock the world and never complain. So even though my leg looked like this, and was badly infected, just about halfway through the race, I couldn't complain. All right, can we put the volume up for the next video? I don't know. Good? Okay. So, I'm glad we already ate, right? So I couldn't complain as much as I wanted to. But if you know about reality TV, know that every single day, it seemed like every minute, or at least every hour, the camera crew or the host or the staff would come up to my partner and I, and they would say, tell us about the leg. Please let us record it. They wanted to show this. And my partner and I refused because it would have gone against our big picture goal. I can brag about it now, but I couldn't during the show. And they really tried. They always asked us. They were so polite about it. But we got very good at deflecting this because we didn't want people to feel bad for us, and we didn't want people to change the way they felt about us solely because, well, now they have to pity us and now they have to be nice when they talk about us. I wanted to just run the race as me, not as the amputee you're supposed to feel sorry about. And my partner on the race ended up being a 2-time gold medalist snowboarder. He's broken 30-some bones in his body. He was running with a sprained wrist for almost the entire race. He never complained once. And so he was the perfect partner for me to have because he truly understood why I didn't want to talk about it on camera. But the camera crew did not understand it. And so they asked him all the time. And they knew they weren't going to get anything from me, so they would ask him, "Hey, Matt, tell us about Red's leg." And Matt would just say, "He's missing it, man. He's been missing it the whole time." What a rude question. And I got good at just deflecting it. We both did. And I have a video clip I want to show you, and it's very subtle, but I want to see if you guys can catch when we deflect the question about the leg.
Redmond, I got to hand it to you, man. You have pushed so hard in this race. You completed 7 legs, and your leg, I mean, you have literally run your leg raw to stay in this race. And I gotta take my hat off to you. I mean, seriously, it's just sheer guts and determination. It's what Matt saw in you in the beginning of this race, and this has got to feel incredible for you right now.
Feels great. It's all because my partner is just amazing. He's supportive.
Not all me.
He's the fastest guy in this race, and so we just make a really strong team.
I'd have to agree. I mean,
Did you guys catch that? Very subtle. Hey, tell us about your leg. My partner's real fast. I don't know if you've seen him. And if I played the clip longer, Phil actually does say, "Oh, yeah, you're right, Matt. You're such a great athlete. Let's talk about you." So after all of this, obviously, I won the race, right? Because I'm up here, I'm talking about it, I'm bragging about it. Obviously, I won the race. No. No, I did not. Why would I even talk about something? Why would I talk about this if I failed and if I came in 4th place? We went 11 out of 12 episodes. We were the last team eliminated. We got 4th place. Why would I talk about something I didn't win? And the truth is, I used to not talk about this. I used to do speeches, and I would either completely not talk about the race, ignore it completely, or I would very briefly mention it. Sometimes there was a time where I even changed the chronological order, so I ended it on me winning Triumph Games, because that's how hypocritical I was, and I didn't notice that I didn't realize that I was on stage telling people that I used to be afraid of failure, but now I'm changed, and then I would totally be afraid of failure and be too embarrassed to talk about my time on the race. I never realized how hypocritical I was being. I was talking the talk, and I definitely was not walking the walk. What I can tell you now, completely truthfully, is I lost the race. I could also tell you that I gave 100%. I could tell you my partner gave 100%. We tried as hard as we could. And if anything I said earlier is true, it means you should never regret anything that you went and attempted. I don't regret going on the race. In fact, it ended up being one of the best experiences of my life. But it took me a long time to find what the opportunity would be. Sometimes, like when you have a doctor telling you one sentence that has your obstacle and your opportunity, it could be very easy to see it. But a time like this, where could my opportunity be? It took me quite a while. Then I found a group called Hearts of Reality. It was this amazing charity event. It's a charity organization, but it's an annual charity event that raises money for children with life-threatening diseases. They actually give all of the money that they raise to a group that is in Orlando, and it is basically its own amusement park right by all of the amusement parks there in Orlando, and they let any children and their families with life-threatening diseases come in there, stay completely for free, and they have contracts with Disney as well as is it Epcot that's over there, so they have free passes to go to the amusement parks. There is a 24/7 ice cream castle that only kids are allowed in there. It's a beautiful place. If you want to learn more about it, you can talk to me about it after. It's a absolutely beautiful place to go, and I had a chance to go over there as a D-list celebrity, as a reality star, and we were able to go there and try and raise money, and we ended up raising either just over or just under $1 million for children with life-threatening diseases. And it was just over, thank you. There were about 100 people that had been on reality shows, as well as hundreds of volunteers and thousands of people donating money. Some people, especially people on Big Brother and Survivor, which gets a lot more attention, they were auctioning off a bandana they had. They were auctioning off a shirt that they wore. For me, I didn't have anything special. I just wore Nike the whole time, and nobody wants my dirty shirts. I found out, well, I ran hard enough that I ripped my toes off. My fake toes, they ripped in, all the toes ripped clean off, and I still had them in my shoe. And so I thought, what if? And so I put it online, and I auctioned off, and that alone brought just over $300 to auction off my foot to somebody that wanted to give money to this amazing cause. And luckily, I just signed on actually last week with another one of these events called Reality Rally, another fun one. This is to fight breast cancer and to help families and the people affected by breast cancer. And so far, as of now, we've been able to raise just over $700, and we're hoping to do a lot more, and this will be in 2 months. So it took me a long time to realize what the opportunity was, and that could be for all of us. It might take us years, which it did for me. It took me almost a year and a half to realize what the opportunity was from this show. And the reason why I couldn't find it is I kept trying to find what my personal benefit was going to be, because sometimes, no matter how grateful you think you are, I know I get selfish, and all I could try and find was, how is this going to help me? Eventually, I had a couple friends from the race show me my opportunity had nothing to do with me. The opportunity was going to try and give back to others. That kind of just brings me to success through struggle in general, and just struggle in general. A lot of times we face struggle, we face a bad obstacle, and we give in. We say, I've given it every single thing I've got, and I've still failed. That's it. I have to throw in the towel now. And it's easy for us to do that. That path is way easier to use it as an excuse, especially when you know other people won't judge you, especially when you have convinced yourself that there's no way to grow or to get past this obstacle. But we know now that every single time we're faced with an obstacle, we're actually presented with an opportunity to succeed and grow, no matter how hard that opportunity may be to find. So I have a challenge for everybody in here. I want to challenge each and every one of you to do one thing. The next time you're faced with any kind of obstacle, no matter how big that obstacle may be, I just want you to not give up. I challenge you to not say, poor me. I challenge you to not ask, why me? And I challenge you to thank life for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please sit down. You're so nice. Thank you, guys. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes. If they give me the hook and pull me off stage, that's fine. But thank you, guys. Amazing audience. I mean, seriously, you guys have just been so fun. Thank you for laughing at my pain and suffering. It really makes me happy. Thanks for laughing with me. If you want, is there any questions about anything? There are no taboo questions here. We have a few minutes, so if somebody has a question about anything that you think I might be able to ask, if not, I will give myself the hook and get off stage here. I don't see any hands. Is there a hand? Yes, sir. Did anybody hear that? Say, prior to getting on stage, did anybody ask me to break a leg? No, and I'm very disappointed that nobody came up with that. Anybody else? Any questions? Nothing is taboo here. All right, if not, you guys can talk to me afterwards. I'll be here for a little while. I think there's a small break. Honestly, thank you so much. I did not give thanks before, so I absolutely, I never forget to do this, so I really want to say, please stand up, Lene. Lene is amazing. She's the reason that I was able to be here. As well as the CEO who I met earlier. Where are you, Josh? There we go. Please give Josh a big round of applause. And last and certainly not least, I stood up took 40 some minutes of your time. Thank you for being here with me. But the whole thing, we're talking about personal growth, personal development, and succeeding through any struggle we're facing. You guys are here. You don't have to be here. You guys are learning how to better your job, and for that, know that you are already 3 steps ahead of all of the competition. So please give yourself a giant round of applause for already making positive change. Thank you very much.